Thank you very much. So I'll ask the speakers to come up who've already been introduced. And this session really is about assessing digital technology and assessing the evidence. And I think, Dean, you're up first.
I am.
And hopefully you can get your presentation up and we'll let you go for about 10 minutes.
Brilliant.
And then we'll come back, hopefully, and we'll have some time for questions at the end.
Maybe slightly less. A minute's
Is it
just
less, is it?
we're 10 minutes over, so
Okay,
we'll try and do 8.
8 minutes.
Ooh, right, no pressure. I should be able to.
One session.
Right, you've got your 10 minutes back.
You don't have, yeah, presentations.
I can if you want to, it's not a problem. Hi everyone, my name's Dean Mawson. I am founder and clinical director of FEDIP Digital Health Consultancy. So we are regulatory compliance consultancies. We support health organisations and digital health manufacturers with their regulatory compliance pathway. Nurse by background, 34 years. Been working in digital health for 18 years now. So yes, back when most of us knew what MP-Fit was back in the day. So I'm going to talk to you about the digital technology assessment criteria, otherwise known as DTAC. So apologies, it's not the purpose to bore you to death in relation to sort of like regulatory compliance. But what we're looking to do with DTAC, so it was introduced in 2021, is raising the bar for safety in relation to digital health technologies. So an overview, just an introduction, I've introduced myself. So the importance of digital technology is essential for modern healthcare in its delivery and comes with important responsibilities, as we know. The role of DTAC is to ensure digital health technologies are safe, effective, and enables the delivery of patient care. So what we're trying to achieve with DTAC is in all of the regulatory compliance requirements under one umbrella. So it makes it easier for digital health manufacturers to apply the regulation. Why DTAC matters? So transformation of patient care. So digital health innovations, again, like we've spoke about a lot, AI and wearables revolutionise how patient care is delivered and managed. And we have an increasing risk profile in relation to this. So rapid innovation introduces clinical data security and interoperability risks. Therefore, they need to be managed and we need the evidence base to make sure that we're mitigating these risks. Therefore, the DTAC assurance framework was introduced. So it provides a standardised baseline framework enabling NHS organisations to have the confidence to procure and deploy technologies within their organisation. So the purpose and the scope. So DTAC is a procurement assurance framework. So DTAC provides a unified framework, as I mentioned before. So it's all under one umbrella and it's introducing consistency. Well, that was the purpose for it when it was brought in. But the disruptive bit comes a bit later. So what is the framework? So it's set up of 5 sections. It covers clinical safety, data protection, technical security, interoperability, and usability and accessibility. And there is stakeholder support in relation to this. So DTAC should support procurement teams, clinical safety officers, which we've spoken about in relation to the safety standards, digital leaders. It should be able, the purpose is to clarify expectations to suppliers as well. So the framework itself. So as I said previously, it's split out into sections. So there's sections A and B, which cover company information and value proposition that are not formally assessed. Then you have section C, which is a pass and fail and covers clinical safety, data protection, technical security, and interoperability standards. And then section D, which covers usability and accessibility, and is very much aligned with a standard which is called WCAG or WCAG, as some people know, 2.1 AA in relation to that. So section C, the core compliant areas, we'll just go into a bit more detail. So clinical safety compliance, but again, not just clinical safety, but also medical device regulation, which I know Serb is going to talk about as well in more detail, applicability. But when we talk about the NHS safety standards, we're talking about DCB 0129. Okay, so that's a standard that's mandated under the Health and Social Care Act in relation to risk management and its application for digital health technologies. So there is an ask that you will provide a hazard log, safety case report, and that you have a clinical risk management system in place, okay, in relation to the evidence base for your digital health technology. And then part of that section as well, as I've mentioned already, there are some questions around, are you a medical device? And if you are a medical device, is providing your evidence base in relation to your technical file, if you need a clinical evaluation plan and report, and your declaration of conformity in relation to that. Then we come on to data protection standards. So the ask is around DPIAs and the DSPT, so Data Security and Protection Toolkit in relation to this area. Technical security measures. So again, we're looking at cyber essentials. Has your technology gone through penetration testing, which is that external assurance in relation to security? Interoperability is also of great importance. So we're looking at API first design, we're looking at FHIR standards, we're looking at NHS logging. So it's making sure that there's scalability and sustainability for your health technologies. If we're introducing technologies into health organisations, they need to have the comfort to know that your technology, if it's being used in anger and by a large population, can sustain that and is scalable. Sometimes overlooked in relation to technologies, usability and accessibility. It's of utmost importance. So NHS service standards in relation to the principles of quality, and again, looking at usability and user journeys, we look at the user UI, UX, these terminologies that are sort of, in the forefront now. So manufacturers need to be demonstrating evidence of user needs, that they've actually taken this into account. The journey, simplicity, is actually working collaboratively. I think Mark has had to go now, Mark Bailey, but was talking about, we need to work together as a team. The health organisations need to work with the manufacturers and vice versa, to make sure that you've got sort of, usability standards, and that it actually sort of, provides benefits to our users and in the delivery of care. I've already mentioned the accessibility and compliance standards. So there are sort of, consultancies out there that use teams of accessibility users in relation to testing some of these technologies. So a bit of a reality check though in relation to DTAC and its application at the moment. So what we're seeing is significant variation in how DTAC standards are being applied throughout the NHS procurement processes. We are seeing some procurement teams within NHS organisations that potentially don't even know what DTAC is. Okay, they do not involve their clinical safety officers in this work, and the specific subject matter experts in relation to reviewing. Yeah, and this is just going to cause issues, and it causes some frustration as well in relation to manufacturers. But again, we also see this from the other side of the fence, where there's potentially a lack of guidance, a lack of understanding from the manufacturer side of the fence as well, which also causes frustration in relation to them supporting getting their DTAC submissions completed. And then there's an argument around, are we stifling innovation with creating too much red tape? So procurement teams, they need to know, okay? It needs to be a single front door in relation to procurement. What we see sometimes is that digital health technologies are not going through the DTAC framework, and they're coming in through the back door. We're hearing conversations about sort of, you may have a group of clinicians and it's like, oh, we know this fantastic app. It's a colleague or it's a friend or it may be a clinician who codes in relation to that, and we're going to use it in our department. 6 months down the line, it's being used. Someone has a conversation around, oh, do you know about DCB 129160 or DTAC? All of a sudden, they're getting in touch with the people that the official sort of, assurance guys, and saying, oh, by the way, just to let you know, we've been using this for 6 months and we now need to get it assured. Yeah. It's the wrong way round in relation to that. So as you can see, bypassing DTAC can lead to unsafe or non-compliant technologies. So best practice in procurement: centralised digital procurement, embed DTAC workflows. So integrate DTAC directly into your procurement workflows. Safety and compliance reviews, they should be mandated. And it's a multidisciplinary assessment panel. So you need to bring the right people to the floor in relation to assessing DTAC from a health organisation perspective, but also from a manufacturer. You need the help, you need the assistance, and you need the right people to be able to make a submission. What is the future of DTAC? So at the moment, NHS England are reviewing the DTAC framework, okay? There has been invite out to suppliers and healthcare organisations for feedback through a questionnaire, and that's in the process of happening at the moment. We are unclear. There's lots of people out there on the ground saying, oh, it's coming out September, well, we're in October now. And, we're a bit unclear about when it's coming out, but it is happening at the moment, and that is a positive steps to see these improvements. Okay. Focus areas including clearer requirements, easier evidence submission, and better AI assurance alignment. So my opinion in relation to this, so standardised DTAC processes, okay? We need to have upskilling of procurement teams. If this is not happening, it needs to happen within your organisations. And we need supplier toolkits and templates. We need that support out there for manufacturers as well as health organisations. And, I'm going to throw this out there. Should we be mandating DTAC? It's not mandated at present. It's not mandated at present. Lots of questions around it's a framework and all the components are mandated within the standard, within the framework. But that's up for discussion. And there's our key takeaways there for you.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Kirby, I'll hand over to you now, and you're going to be talking about when is software a medical device, understanding the regulations. So.
Everyone, good afternoon. So my name is Surbhi Gupta. I'm the regulatory lead at NHS England. I also act as the advisor to the National AI. So that's it. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about when does your software become a medical device, and I think this has been mentioned a little bit throughout the day. So I'll try to decode this a little bit for you. So in this session, I'll talk about what's the role of software in modern medical devices, how medical devices actually improve patient care and safety, a little bit about regulatory consideration, and how we can distinguish between a software which is a medical device from other health IT systems. So why does it matter? Like, why should we talk about it? So the bottom line is that a number of software products and AI products are regulated as medical devices. And sometimes I see that a lot of people are kind of unaware of this fact that the software that you're using could actually be regulated. Some people talk about they should be regulated without appreciating the fact that currently the medical device regulation actually covers some of these software already. So in the UK, the current medical device regulation, UK MDR 2002 as it's called, it specifies the requirements that a legal manufacturer of a medical device must meet before they put these devices onto market. And it's this regulation that's kind of ensuring that the devices a manufacturer is placing on the market are safe and effective, not just for the patients, but also for the public and for the professionals who are using these devices. And this medical device regulation applies throughout the life cycle of the product, so starting from the development and deployment to post-market maintenance of these products, the regulation applies throughout the life cycle. So what is a medical device? And this is a definition I've just picked up from the regulation that it defines what a medical device is. I'm not going to read it, but it's here to read. If your product, the product that you're manufacturing satisfies this definition, that is, it is a medical, then you need to register it with the authority in this country, which is MHRA. And MHRA has the rights to enforce this law on the medical devices in this country. Many standalone softwares and apps that meet the requirement of this regulation must be CE marked or UKCA marked to ensure that they're regulated and that they're acceptable to use safely with the public. The first step to actually determine whether the software that you're developing could become a medical is qualifying as a medical device or not is kind of a complicated process sometimes. And I say it's more an art than a science sometimes, because usually it's not very clear cut whether it falls into the medical device category or not. So MHRA has provided a lot of very good guidance to help the manufacturers make this determination. And some of their guidance can be found just on their website. I've given a screenshot here. There is a link here as well. And this flowchart based answering the questions is based on an international document called MedDev. So basically, it's not something that UK is creating on its own. It's an internationally recognized method of determining when a software should qualify as a medical device and thus follow the regulation. And in this flowchart, there are two main things that we need to talk about. So what is the purpose of the product that you're making? Does it qualify as a medical purpose or not? That is where most of the time it comes down to the intended use of your product. Does it fall under the green box or does it fall under the purple box? So green box is a medical purpose. So anything, if your product is doing prevention of disease or diagnosis of disease or monitoring of disease or treatment of disease, that's a medical purpose. Whereas if it's doing medical education or if it's storing and transmitting data without any change, so quite a lot of examples in the purple box which do not qualify as medical purpose. And this is where I see there's a lot of confusion, because when you speak to clinicians, a lot of these products which are used within the NHS, within the health environment, to them, all of them is a medical purpose. But in this particular case, we are defining the medical purpose as it is defined in the regulation. And that's where sometimes there is confusion on, oh, is it a medical purpose or is it not a medical purpose? We're using it on patients, but does it actually fall within the category of medical purpose? Is a tricky one sometimes to tell. So I'll give you some examples which will hopefully explain this in a bit better way. So some of the non-medical purposes, for example, so if you're using a software that's enabling clinical communication or workflows, like things to schedule patients' visits or patient registrations, these are clearly defined as non-medical purposes. So what the regulator is saying, we are not interested in regulating these products. These can go on, follow our normal good stuff like DCB and DTAC, but doesn't have to follow them. Another common example we see is software that's only recording data and retrieving data as is without making any modification to it. So again, from regulators' point of view, not a medical purpose. And then a big category is around health apps. So things on your watch that's counting steps or anything that's within the wellness regime is not considered a medical purpose unless it's directly diagnosing or treating or aiding in a clinical decision making. So these fall outside the regulation. So within NHS England, so we act as legal manufacturer of some of these software devices, so which we manage and nationally use products. So some of the examples are here. So the product that underpins the telephonic 999 and 111 services, for example, is NHS Pathways, which is a registered medical device. We have some calculated tools available on nhs.uk, which are qualified as medical devices. The latest addition is a product called Digital Health Check, which sits side by side with the face-to-face health checks that we do at our GP practices. So that's a new product, again, registered as a medical device. And we have a couple of AI medical devices which are in the pipeline. So any AI product falls within the software medical device definition. So at this point, I thought we'll do a little quiz in the room. I'll give a few seconds. Please raise your hand if you think, from based on whatever I've told you so far, if this is a device, medical device or not. And this is a real example. We do have this product. So we call it comforting as a service. So this is the purpose of this tool is to identify groups of people with shared characteristics from a national database. And then these group of people are then subjected to a particular clinical or diagnostic intervention. So think about COVID vaccination, some people getting a letter to say, you have to come and get this vaccination first. So something like that. So tool itself is not treating or diagnosing, but it's collecting information and then deciding what intervention should be provided. So raise of hands if you think it's a device. Oh, Seb, do you think it's a device? No, it's not. Because the keyword here was that it's taking the data without making any modifications to it. As a user is defining, these are my characteristics. Find anyone who's aged above this, whose demographic is this. Just find me this information. So it's conducting a database search, a simple search, and it's not doing any modification to data. Therefore, it's not a medical device if we will go through this flowchart. But this hopefully gives you an idea for why, as a clinician, you might think, oh, this is such an important piece of software. If we get this wrong, we to people. Of course, it's important. The regulators do not think that it's regulated. You have to do your DCBs, yes, but it is not considered a med. Let's do another one. So this is an AI product. So this is a product which will write discharge summaries and LLM, which will look at your EPR records, starting from the patient comes in, looking at different interactions. At the end, it will create a summary. Discharge summary that you can then send out with your patients. So this assistant, this tool is generating the draft by selecting the right information, interpreting this information in a way, summarizing it, and then creating a new letter a discharge letter. Again, please raise of hands if you think this is a device. Yes, really good, yes. Definitely a device. And I'll just put one more out there because this is quite a hot topic at the moment. So we have a number of calculators, and as clinicians, you may have used a number of calculators in your clinical practice where you give some information and then this calculator is predicting a risk score for, you are more likely to develop colorectal cancer, therefore go and have a CT scan done more often than another person. So the device. Yes. Yeah, so something like this is aiding in clinical decision making. This is not a simple search. It's actually doing some complex calculation to determine which clinical pathway you must undergo. So why is it important to go through all these complex processes? Because if your software is a medical device, then it has to follow certain regulatory requirement through its development, through its deployment, through its post-market surveillance process. So really important to get the first step right and get the qualification assessment. And then I know this is a busy slide, but just want to bring to your attention that the medical device regulation in this country is imminently changing. So MHRA is due to announce an amendment to the current medical device regulation in the next year. And the whole motivation behind this is to make our devices more safe. The regulation is quite archaic. It's been around for many, many years. And when it was written, software and so the current regulation isn't really catering for software and AI specific nuances. But we are not sure if the amendment would cater for AI specific nuances, but this is a step forward in that direction. So in this amendment, new rules and new things would be announced, which will cater for software more specifically. And what's likely to happen, and MHRA has said this in public consultations, in their public webinars, etc., that many of the softwares which at the moment are classified as the lowest risk class would up-classify to one risk higher. And what that means is there would be a bit more scrutiny, there would be an independent assessment that would be needed to get your registration for your software product. So quite a lot of changes. This is a really changing landscape at the moment. And we are expecting to see this published and become law sometime next year. And this will align MHRA's regulation more closely with the EU regulation. So EU actually has already moved to the stricter regulation, and they're already applying the stricter regulation at the moment. And with this, MHRA would align to the stricter EU regulations as well. And this is the criteria they're going to follow on risk classification. So really asking the question, where your software plays a role in a clinical pathway. Is it affecting a very critical scenario, a serious scenario, or a non-serious scenario? Is it treating, driving, or informing clinical management? So this is like a 2x2 matrix, which will determine which risk classification will take. And of course, the devil is in the detail. How do you define critical? How do you define inform versus drive? So all this information we are expecting to see in the amendment that yeah, just a timeline for that. They did already announce some new rules on post-market surveillance requirements, which came in force earlier this year. So MHRA has been quite busy. I won't mention DCB. A lot has been discussed on DCB and the current ongoing. So I'll just stop here then.
Thank you very much. Good, and I just hand over now to Farhan. He will give us a bit of information about the evidence and applying that evidence.
I'm Farhan Ismail. I'm the Associate Director of the Office for Digital Health and MedTech Top Intelligence at NICE. I'm a pharmacist by background. I've been at NICE for around 4 years. My team's been building up momentum within NICE to start evaluating digital health tech. I think we're approaching our 200th evaluation in terms of digital health product, which is fantastic. But I've been doing digital for around a decade, and it's really interesting to see how this area has developed, how quickly, slowly it's moving. It'll probably take us about a decade to get to grips with how digital works, but ESF is something that published in 2022. And starting with the why did we need an evidence standards framework for digital? You've heard already, medical devices, any product with a medical purpose, needs to be regulated as a device. Now, the layer beyond that is that these products need to have clinical evidence to support their safety and effectiveness. We want to make sure the products we're rolling out to patients actually work. That's the time. Evidence builds trust. We want clinicians to use our products, we want patients to trust them, they need confidence in the tools that we develop. The evidence can develop that. And when it comes to adoption as well, just if you're running a business and you want to produce something that the system actually takes up, the evidence question always comes up. So the NICE evidence standards framework for digital health technology was developed quite a while ago, initially conceived in 2017, first published in December 2018, iterated twice since then. Last update was published in August 22, and it focused on data-driven technologies and artificial intelligence. Now, the aim of this framework is to give companies the guidance they need to generate evidence in the right places, which evaluators can then use to inform consistent decision-making, then hand that off to create products that end users can actually access, with a view to start stimulating the market. Probably got a view from speakers today that it's been a bit of a wild west over the last 10 years. The way these products are traditionally developed, they're not like pharmaceuticals, not like medtech products where there's a clear pathway to market. They're coming out of bedroom coders or actually more sophisticated businesses translated from other products, but the evidence gap has always been empty. So what does it seek to do? The ESF itself describes the evidence levels, which are based on digital health technology classification, which you've already touched upon. Comes from not sure what that was. Something.
People are guessing. I'd switched to.
The ESF describes the evidence levels based on the classification of the product. That's the risk classification. It describes how companies or developers can demonstrate the value and effectiveness of their product. It encourages them to design data collection early in the development process. And ultimately, this leads to more consistent, well-informed decision making. Now, the latest iteration for the ESF was focusing on a few alignments. So it's been designed to align to the IMDRF regulation, which has already been mentioned. So using concepts like inform and drive and treat and monitor to make sure there's a global language around this, and also addressed some ease of use functions. Effective. I mentioned earlier, it focused on technologies. It was actually developed with a panel of global experts. We had about 30 organisations who fed into it. It was co-designed with Imperial College, University of Birmingham, and the Alan Turing Institute. We had input from the MHRA, Health Technology Wales, and Scottish Health Technologies Group. So really broad engagement in an effort to make sure this works for as many people as possible. Now, the standards themselves, as I mentioned already, they are based on risk classification. So what you see here, 3 tiers of technology. Tier A are basically system efficiency tools, your admin tools. Tier B are your products which work at population level, education tools, diaries, not much in terms of clinical function, not bespoke. And Tier C, which is where you're most likely to be a medical device, if your product lands in this space, then anything that informs, drives, treats, or diagnoses will probably be a medical device and would require good clinical evidence as well to support its use. Now, these categories have been mapped over to a product cycle. We heard from experts that this is how development happens, and we've considered factors ranging from the initial design through to how to demonstrate value. performance, all the way through to deployment. And standards in all their glory. We're not going to go over this today in 10 minutes, unfortunately. Take a few hours to go through this, but you can see from here we've got a framework of 21 standards which cover these aspects. Now, it's really important if you're in this space to have an understanding of what these are. 3 years later, after we've really kicked off digital health evaluations at NICE, we're still seeing same sorts of gaps, and we're beginning to see where the best product come out from as well, in terms of how they're developed with academics, big companies with a lot of resource behind them to do this sort of research versus very small out, simply don't have the resource to develop. In terms of update, the last set of standards, you can see all these red boxes, is highlight the standards which were either introduced or ended since the previous study. And there's quite a lot of change you can see from that. More relevant to today is related to AI and data-driven tech, generally map over to these standards. Now, if you've got questions about this, it is quite a technical document. And most importantly, it gives you a window into how NICE thinks. It's been a real challenge for a lot of companies over the past few years. You know, what does NICE want from us? If you're able to look through these, read the information behind each standard, you'll get an understanding of the sort of work you need to be doing to be able to bring a product through, get it evaluated by NICE, if that's part of your plan. Now, there are a set of substandards, or sorry, a subset of standards for companies to develop their products early on, possibly with limited resource, and experts have advised that these are the most important standards that should be focused on for those sorts of products. And there's a lot of funding awards out there, the SBRIs, IFRIs, those sorts of awards really lean into these standards. So it's important to be aware of these as well if you're in that space. Now, some of the limitations of the ESF. Now, NICE is a national evaluator. It's not a regulator. So fulfilling the evidence standards framework, that not mean the product meets regulatory requirements. That's the MHRA's role. We have aligned this product as much as we can to MDR and the plans for what the future medical device regulations might look like. So it's important to acknowledge that. And also, you tick through the entire standards framework as a developer. This does not mean that your product's being assessed by NICE. Still you need to go through one of NICE's evaluation programs to get to that point. But it'll put you in a really good position to know your works, whether it's safe, effective, and preparing it for a NICE evaluation. So, for people in this space, if you're early in your career or if you're more advanced, I think it would all be that good evidence, this credibility to your product, which builds trust and then confidence, both from the clinician's perspective, the patient's perspective, the system's perspective. This can support deployment. And the ESF is designed to encourage people to plan your research early. We're seeing a lot of standardization in digital. 10 years on, you know, we've already spoken about DTAC and MDR. ESF is not a standard, but it acknowledges all the other clinical components that need to be considered in this space, with a specific focus on the clinical aspect of this. More information you can
Thank you. We've got 2 minutes for questions, so I'll come to you, John, first.
Quick one for Dean. You didn't delve into the interoperability element of the DTAC. I'm interested to know how that's tested out.
So in relation to interoperability, so looking at sort of like opening cloud first, in relation to that, I purposely didn't want to go into sort of like, you know, the depths of you can access sort of the DTAC sort of questionnaire, and also it's being revised at the moment, so I wouldn't like to sort of like, you know, go into sort of like too much detail, because someone will sort of take me as read on that, and then in a couple of months' time we're going to get a revised standard in relation to that.
Thanks.
Okay, 2 good questions here.
Hi, this sounds really cheeky, but as a business that is coming into the NHS and you have these enormous barriers. So say you have to go for medical device registration, that's actually got to go to 2 if you've got a software product, which appears is actually much tougher than the other things. So you get through medical device, then you have to do DTAC, then you have to do the other one as well. And so by that time, you then get into doing a pilot. And a lot of pilots used to give software for free and then find out there's no money to actually pay for the product that you've actually tested. And so with the NHS trying to encourage innovators to come in and actually deliver software solutions, innovative software solutions, do you not think that this layer of all these layers of regulation push those kind of products away from the NHS?
And then
That's-
the regulation is not NHS specific, yes. The regulations are the medical device regulation.
Oh, no, of course, medical device, but the other ones are
And the
really
other
about the
ones are,
NHS.
in my view, if as an innovator, if you want anyone to buy your product, they will want to ask you exactly the same questions. Have you tested? Is it safe? Can you show me an evidence it works? Is it value for money? The NHS frameworks are asking you exactly the same thing which your potential, someone who has to pay you for this will ask.
Well, yes, in terms of medical device regulations, but
In general, the DTAC is also asking the same questions. NICE is asking the same questions. So I don't understand I mean, I have worked in startups before I moved to NHS. As a startup, if I'm going to sell my product for trust, the trust will ask me the same thing. The clinician will ask me the same thing. These frameworks are just asking the innovators the same thing. I mean, that's my view.
Okay, no, good. That's a good answer. We can debate it. We've got a question online.
A question online, which is, how do nations outside the UK assess technologies? Why should England be different if there's an accepted way of doing it elsewhere, or is there an accepted way of doing it elsewhere?
Internationally, in relation to 129 and 160, so we know there's DCB 129 and 160. I'm known blowing the trumpet of sort of, and so we should be, is that they are recognised frameworks, and there are other nations that are looking at. I know, like, there's potentially some work in Canada. I know there's some people in Australia that have looked at those standards as well, because there aren't equivalents that we're seeing across internationally in relation to that. Yes, you have the safer framework in the US, in the HIT safer framework. Happy to share that, but I think 129 and 160, especially with its revision, needs to be the gold standard.
I mean, I'm going to speak from Scotland, where we don't have those legislated, but we do have ISO standard.
Absolutely.
An ISO standard equivalence.
There's room for a bit of clarity, isn't there, in this whole space? I'm ever so sorry. I know there's loads of questions. I think, have we got time for one more, Dan, or?
Yes.
It was really in response to the lady that I think there's a lot of confusion around DTAC. DTAC is a framework. Essentially, it's a checklist. So if you've got software as a medical device, then you're going to have to meet your cybersecurity requirements. You're going to have to meet your IG requirements. It's likely to interoperate, so you've got to meet those requirements. The test evidence you're using for your software as a medical device, you're using to meet your interop API and all that. So I wouldn't be intimidated by DTAC. It's a checklist, and as long as the standards, which and evidence and everything else that you have to evidence as part of that DTAC submission, you're going to have to do it anyway. So and it's a lot of confusion. People say it's a big extra thing. It's not. If you meet the standards for software as a medical device and all the underlying evidence, a DTAC should take you an hour to complete.
And on that lovely note.
Good to finish on that.
End the session. Thank you ever so much, everybody. Obviously,